My name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with the Newspaper Guild in San Francisco Work Week, and also I'm with SLAP, Schools and Labor Against Privatization. One of the things about SLAP is to fight privatization of education and public services. And there have been a number of attacks on public workers and nonprofits workers here in San Francisco and other areas. So we'll have some speakers around that. The first issue has been the systemic racism that's been going on in San Francisco. There's been an attack on black workers and privatization of outsourcing of services in San Francisco, Healthcare 360, and also an effort to shut down the Laguna Honda Hospital, which is really an important working class institution for poor people, working people. And they were expelling people from the hospital, discharging people, and 9 people died at the hospital as a result of these discharges. So it's been temporarily halted, but they still are, it's still threatened. It's not over. So our first 2 speakers are going to be Brenda Barros and Cheryl Thornton. Brenda is president of the San Francisco chapter of SEIU General Hospital 1021, and Cheryl Thornton is with the Community Health Care Services chapter and vice chair. So
we have had like at least 7 or 8 year campaign against discriminatory and bullying behavior within the workplace. So we've had some successes in putting on the radar. I don't know if you heard in the city, they have a Department of Equity now. We were happy about that until we found out that they started it, but then they don't do damn thing, nothing. You know, the person that was head of it is gone. Nobody knows what's happening with it. It's a mess. And so those of us who have been campaigning, because we've been getting movement, are now being targeted. Cheryl's being targeted, I'm being targeted, to the point where we called out a bullying manager, and then they filed restraining orders on us. So we had to go to court. Thank God the judge sided with us, saying, you know, this is America, we have free speech. But I'm saying those are the tactics that they're using for everybody. And so it's getting worse. So Cheryl's still in the workplace, I'm still in the workplace, and we are dealing with the same people. You know, the same abusers, they're still there. They're not gone. And there's still ongoing issues. They've stepped back on me a little bit, but they haven't really stepped back on Cheryl. And they don't want to meet. So, you know, the pressure's still on. And, you know, I'm at the point now where it's like, I don't care that they don't like it. I don't care that they get mad. I'm not worried about getting a damn promotion. This just needs to stop. And so that's where I am, and they all know it too. So it's nothing really they can hold over my head because I have enough years to retire if I wanted to. I could retire 5 years ago if I wanted to. But I'm staying because I want to try to make sure that the people behind me do not have to put up with the same crap that I had to do. And it's impacting all different groups. It's impacting all different races. I mean, to the point to where we had one member who died. You know, he was being bullied so bad. And then he had a stroke. And then he was off work 6 months. He came back. And instead of them easing somebody who just came back from a stroke into work, they escalated. They put the pressure on twice as hard as it was before. And the man eventually ended up having a massive stroke and dying. So this is very serious, and this is causing lives for a lot of people. There are a lot of people out on mental illness, stress leaves, because they don't know what to do and they can't take it anymore. But the city doesn't seem to care. They just don't, they don't care. They really don't care. That's what it seems like, they don't care. You run across individual managers that care, but overall what we see coming out of City Hall is they don't care. So I don't know. So that's why people are out there around elections. That's why we're going to have to think really hard. Particularly, I think we all found out that, you know, whoever's the mayor, is very important to us, right? For our wages, for everything. So hopefully we get better people in office that are willing to, have a little backbone and not afraid to go against the status quo. And, that's why I'm so important to people I am, because they seem to be those kind of people. So that's all I have to say right now. Cheryl, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl Thornton, and as Steve said, I'm the Vice President for the Community Health Chapter and a shop steward for SEIU 10 to 1. And I guess in 2014, I got into this fight because there was a lot of unequitable treatment in our department. And so we've been fighting, Brenda and I and others, we've been fighting for some time now, trying to make the workplace fair and equitable. But to no avail, we have not been able to do that. So recently, as Brenda mentioned, someone in our union filed a restraining order, attempted to file a restraining order against us, but they were denied. And then she pursued it and took it to court. And fortunately, the judge said that we had the right to our First Amendment rights and that we could speak. But secondly, we are shop stewards, and we were representing other people in our union who had been bullied and harassed. And for that, we received this this member tried to take a restraining order out on us for being a shop steward. The really egregious thing to me was that our union, when some union members were filing complaints against this member, they never actually tried to mitigate the problem by doing member-to-member, mediation to try to alleviate the problem. HR did not apparently, I'm not sure if they investigated. I was told that they didn't. But the issue is that our own union is pitting members against members, because some of these things could be resolved within our union. And what's even more egregious is that our own union, this was an internal matter. And I called our union several times and asking them to come to court with us to explain to the judge that this was a internal matter, but they refused to come to court with us. So we had to hire an attorney and take a vacation day from work to defend ourselves. And I mean, at the bedrock of a union is representation. And without shop stewards out there fighting for the rights of our members, where will we be? And so, besides unequitable and discriminatory, what we're facing at work, we're also facing it within our union. Our union is allowing one member to pit against another member. And I don't know how long that can go on. They just walked away from us. And, other members heard, saw what we were going through. And they actually want to withdraw from our union, because it's like, if you're shop steward, shouldn't you be protected by your union for doing union work, for making good faith complaints? But we were attacked. So thank you. That's all I had to say.
It's not just about San Francisco city workers, because actually what happened was, when this hearing was taking place, the restraining order, I went down to cover it and to interview people, and lo and behold, there was another hearing being held at the same time with a lot of workers from Mission Community Resource Center, and where another restraining order was being used against a worker. So Christina Gutierrez, it was one of the people that was there to talk about, to defend a worker, Sergio Sosa. So you want to talk, Christina?
And I know this is going to sound kind of weird, when I said I'm happy to find you and that you guys are going through what we went through with the so-called restriction order, you know. And I'm glad that the judge that you have, which was the one that we were supposed to have the same day, we were the same day at the court, find in your favor, correct? So that gives me some hope for when we go next. and the situation is that not only Sergio Sosa, you know, is one of the workers that was, that they gave him a restriction order. And the most horrible thing is that they did it on the basis of what they call sexual harassment, accusing him of leaving the picket line that we have outside. And, you know, a lot of us were in the same picket line. We witnessed to the fact that they accused him that he went inside and tried to harass the woman that went inside. Well, he never went inside. He went there for 20 minutes and then went back to work to the place that he had just gotten a job in the kitchen, you know, in order to make a living to support his 2 children. And then they got this restriction order against him. And now for all of us who work for Compañeros del Barrio, a nonprofit agency, it was really horrible. They accused us of being violent, and they tried to get us out of the building. They actually got a lawyer to accuse us of being violent, but particularly myself. I have spit at people and hit him and all the stuff. I have all the witness that I never did anything like that. But they tried to kick us out of there. It took 14 days hunger strike for us to stop this from happening to ourselves. So this is something that they're doing, and I think that we need to figure out how to work together to finish this, because nonprofit, you know, I'm a nonprofit and I'm a director of one of those nonprofits. And the workers don't have a union because there is not even enough money to figure out how to give a union to that. But most of the directors make $100,000 a year. Meanwhile, the workers are making $30,000, $40,000 a year. You know what I mean? So we begin to wonder what's happening. So I hope, my hope of being here is how we can work together so that we can make sure that workers' right to protest, to organize, to inform people about what's going on is not taken away, you know, and that we are not punished for showing solidarity to other workers. Workers don't get punished for that like we were. And also, you know, that we need to unionize. We need to unionize the workers in the nonprofit, which means that the city hall is going to have to come up, or the city, or whoever in the government is going to have to come up with enough money so that workers that work in nonprofit can make the same amount, you know, a decent amount of money. I know, for example, in Glide Memorial, some of these people needed to work 3 jobs in order to pay the rent. So I think that this is outrageous. I think that this is our time for all of us to organize. And that's why I'm here, you know, to work together and see how we can do something. And maybe I know you were suggesting sometime a press conference or something like that together to denounce what's going on. But that's what I'm here. That's all. Thank you.
So I have a question for you, because I was there.
You need to speak really loud because I'm kind of deaf.
I have a question. What I noticed is a lot of the nonprofit work is being funded by public dollars. And instead of just organizing, trying to get a union, I want to know how can we organize to get this to be public work? Because the reason they're giving all this work to these nonprofits so that they can abuse workers, pay them less. And this is actually city work. I mean, they had a hearing on it yesterday about the Felton family. 95% of their money is coming from the city dollars, public dollars. And so we need to figure out how to shut down some of these nonprofits and make people public workers so that they can get paid what they're supposed to be paid for their work.
I agree with you 100%. That's what we've been saying all along. We need to stop this whole so-called nonprofit. Those are mafia. And I work for one, but I look at it as my job. But I agree with you. This should be the government, should be in charge of making sure that people have the food, the clothes, the housing, all these things that, quote unquote, the nonprofit provide, but they don't. They don't really do that, but that the government is responsible. And it's not, we don't need, people don't need to depend on whether the government decides to give you 100,000 this year and 200,000 later and take away. And then our people are always not sure of what's going to happen, and then the workers get exploited the way we exploit the workers, So I agree with you 100%, and that's what made me so happy to see that other people have the same way of thinking that I saw. Maybe I was crazy, and I was raising these questions that are totally out of nowhere, but thank you so much. I agree. Let's work together and see how we can do it. Right now, what we're trying to do, if I may say it for the group, is that we're trying to go to City Hall, to the Board of Supervisors meeting, to demand that they do investigative audits of all these agencies so that we find out where the money is really going, whether for services or for the higher up salaries, And to have also said that if you're going to give money to any agency, they should be all have a union. And the most important issue is that we believe profoundly that these nonprofit have no place. They are a way to, exploit workers. They are a way to take away the right of other workers to really benefit what belongs to them, such as housing, food, et cetera, and depending on handouts, but that the government should be responsible and they should become public workers. So I agree with you 100%, and I'm so happy that we're talking the same language, right?
I think that exactly the first step in doing that is exactly union 1021 should be organizing these people so that it is the workers themselves who can press for making this government. It's not something that's going to be come down from on high. So if the city workers and the workers in the nonprofits doing city work are in the same union and are solidarizing together and are working together, that's unionizing, I think, the so-called nonprofits is, I think, the first step towards exactly what both of you are talking about.
I agree with you, and I think that they should, but, the reality is, what I see happening is that because certain jobs were done by public sector workers, right? They were public sector jobs. They were done by employees of the city. And then gradually, they started migrating those jobs into nonprofit. So what you have is, you have a little bit of animosity from the city workers toward the nonprofit workers who feel like they're taking their jobs. And then you have the nonprofit workers who are upset with the city workers because we do the same thing and we don't get paid the same. And I totally agree with that. I think it's outrageous that you do the same work. You're doing the same work a city worker did 6 months ago. They put the work in a nonprofit, and then all of a sudden you're making a third of what they make. That makes no sense, and it's really not fair.
Oh, yeah.
And that is, the big issue. And the unions have not figured out how to solve that problem yet. I think they're working on it, but they have not figured out how to solve that problem.
Agree.
And so I agree. I feel like they need to be in this public work. It should be done by public.
I agree with that.
And we should be fighting like hell, our union, to make you guys public workers.
Yeah, I agree.
I think our union should be.
I really agree with that. We need to really, the nonprofit are a threat, to working class people's rights and to the communities. Because as a Latino woman, right, that I deal with the problems that the community has, and in our black communities too happens, in all these communities, we've been told to depend on handouts of the government, and we shouldn't. We have the right to be treated as workers with unions and rights, and the government should be responsible for what our people need, you know what I mean? And as long as they keep this nonprofit, it's like a mafia there. Because if you have a director that make $100,000 a year, and some of them make 150 and whatever, if you had that much money, right, and you are supposed to be serving people that make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, It's very hard. And then you become to have the charity attitude of, I'm going to save you, I'm giving you free diapers, right? I'm giving you free food, which is not true. They're not giving us nothing free. They're giving us the leftovers. They're giving us something that is even outdated, that they cannot sell on the stores. And we take it home to feed it to our children. So I think that the solution is that. And we've been talking about that, in our meetings too, desperately saying, we need to go ahead and say that we don't need this nonprofit. We need to have public workers, and we need to have our children go to a good hospital. Because, and I have respect for all the work that our people do there, but, these little clinics don't have all the things that we people need, like dialysis and all that. They don't have that there. You know what I mean? In the preschools, and I run a preschool, we don't have all the access to a lot of things that we should be able to access, and to people to come in. And so we're fighting for children to come in into our programs, especially after the pandemic, And we should be able to have housing for our people, you know what I mean? Have salary that allow us to pay the rent that you had to pay in San Francisco. So I agree with you 100%. And that way they cannot divide us. And that way the government assumes the responsibility that they should have for our people. All of us, all our working people.
For a few, not a lot of people, but a few people will be able to move into city employment. And so I think that's it. I don't think the answer is what some people will try to say, well, they just want to get rid of the nonprofits. No, not the workers, right? Just the umbrella, right? Instead of that umbrella, you become under the city. But the workers should stay.
We can come and work in the government agencies. See, if there's a hospital, then there should be people who work on healthcare should be able to be put in that hospital, and that hospital be expanded. I feel like that. Housing, right? Instead of me trying to give $400 to you today for housing, and then the next month you have nothing, is that we go into the government housing programs that they have and make those housing programs work. And our people should be hired. So it shouldn't be a contradiction. But I know they're going to say that. They're going to put us against each other, saying that we're saying, but we shouldn't be afraid. We need to speak the truth.
I also want to add, Health Right 360 is a nonprofit that is growing in the state of California, taking over public work all up and down the state of California. Yeah. And what I want to say is that because it's the private sector, and it's not public work, they don't have to follow the same rules around public accommodations. We fought in the 60s through civil rights for public accommodations around civil rights access.
Yes.
And they're taking all that away. And that's why it's one thing for our unions to organize, but they're organizing them, but they're not talking about creating public work.
Right.
And we have to stop this because the people you see in San Francisco who are suffering are the disenfranchised, the poor people from this. And they don't have access to do the same thing around maybe discrimination around different things like we have the same rights. And they also need a pension. And it's really about that pension that they're trying to take away. Right. And it's wrong to enslave these people and abuse them and exploit them. And so I think that we need to organize, but we need to bring something to the ballot to stop this outsourcing of public work into private work. And we have to, we need to organize in San Francisco because it's at the detriment of the residents of San Francisco that everything is being privatized. It actually is. Because the quality of the services go way down. Not that you guys don't want to do the service, but because you don't have the resources to do it. You don't have the manpower to do it. And so we just need to really figure out how through organizing to create some resolutions and legislation to shut down all of this privatization and go back to public work.
I agree with
An example would be the GI clinic at San Francisco General. That was a purely city clinic. I ran that clinic for many, many years, right? Gradually, 3 or 4 positions would be taken away, 5 positions would be taken away, and now that clinic is completely contracted out. So there are no city employees in the GI clinic anymore. So that's an example, and we see this, right? We know that used to be all city work, and now all of a sudden it's contractor work. Even though the contractor is UCSF, it's still a contractor. So that's an example of the kind of things that we're seeing. And sometimes it's a job here, it's a couple jobs there, but in that case, it's the whole thing. The Ward 86, the AIDS clinic, same thing. It used to be all city run, and now none of it's city run. So those are the kind of things that we see happening, and that's why some people who have been involved in some of that feel that way. We don't disparage the nonprofit workers at all. We think it's horrible how they're being treated. And I keep saying they should be made city workers. And, there has to be a way to have that done. There has to be a way to have that done. And I think that's what we should be working toward, figuring out a way. How do we move these people back into city employment to where they get the pensions, and they get the benefits, and they get the higher pay, and they get the wage increases when we get them? Because that's what I want.
For decades now, for a long time, the basic attitude of what unions are for is for lobbying for better legislation and for voting, casting ballots for better politicians, which does not work. I'll tell you, the way to get, in my opinion, the way to get the nonprofit jobs back into the public sector is by 1021 organizing all the workers and them all going on strike together. Both the city workers and the nonprofit workers going on strike, demanding a better way of doing things. That's what'll get something done. Not hoping for better legislation. That's my opinion.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, my name is John Holmes. I sometimes teach at Merritt College. A proud home of the Black Panther Party history, and I'm currently a representative of the part-timers, the freeway flyers, as we get called, on the executive board of the Peralta Federation of Teachers. That's the East Bay community colleges. I have a tiny little speech, which this is the second time I'm giving it today, because we had a little event at Laney College today called Part-Time Equity Week. I want to say a few words about what's going on with community colleges in the state of California, in particular about the one that I'm working at, or that I used to work at, I should say. I don't have a job this semester. And basically at the community colleges in the East Bay, and I'm sure it's the same all over the state, the community college, the campuses are being turned into ghost towns. It's amazing. Classes are on the chopping block, part-timers like myself are losing their jobs, and students are stranded. And these cutbacks, by the way, are not because the community colleges are in the red. It's not because Peralta is in the red, which used to be, it no longer is, and it's not because of the pandemic either, which by now is just an excuse for cutting classes. What's happening is the administration at Peralta is deliberately downsizing the campuses, and it's not just at Peralta. It's because that the Peralta Board of Trustees is following orders from the top. The California Board of Governors of the community colleges, appointed by Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom, okay? There is an explicit plan to downsize the community colleges. They are no longer supposed to provide adult education. Vocational education even is being downsized to complaint of various local employers, and the latest change in the official mission statement for the community colleges in San Francisco is the community colleges are no longer supposed to supply remedial education. I know for a fact that given the miserable state of most of the Oakland public schools, without remedial education in English, it could be damn difficult for an Oakland student not from one of those elite charter schools to be able to handle one of my history classes, okay? Now, the community colleges are no longer supposed to be for the benefit of poor and working people, but strictly for upwardly mobile, middle-class students who tend to be white, to help them get into the four-year colleges, particularly the ones whose grades maybe weren't good enough to get into Cal State Hayward or UC Berkeley the first time around. So they have a second bite of the apple at a community college, so as to be able to get, get the certificate and get qualified to get into Cal State Hayward or whatever. So, and that's why it is that Peralta, whose student body is a lot poorer and not as white as a lot of the other districts. Same is true for SFCC, by the San Francisco City College, where the situation is even worse than at Peralta, has always gotten the bad end of the stick in the past, and nowadays even more so. So what are you going to do about that? Well, we're in the middle of election fever, but the sad fact is in this bluest of blue states, you can't blame Republicans for the fix that we're in. Our Peralta Board of Trustees, by the way, which was billed as being the progressive board, we'd elected all these progressives who were supposed to be pro-union, right? We were the model for that in the whole damn state. But then they got threatened with a state takeover. I think FIP might have been involved in that at some point. And so our progressive Peralta Board of Trustees, most of whom were elected by the union, literally, out as we speak. My fellow members are out there campaigning for the latest bunch of alleged progressives. But the threat of a state takeover was rescinded because the Board of Trust, this progressive board who promised the State Board of Governors to always do exactly what they are told and to be just as hard against the unions and just as much in favor of downsizing as, the conservatives or whatever. So what I said today at our little event at the Laney Quad is that going to board meetings, they have Zoom board meetings where you get to make a few comments on Zoom. No, not even face-to-face anymore. Going to board meetings to complain and pushing another progressive politician, on election day doesn't cut it. The downsizing of Peralta, by the way, doesn't just affect us part-timers who are losing the jobs. It affects the students. It affects the blue-collar workers who are in the operating engineers local. It affects the white-collar workers of Peralta, who are all in 1021, by the way. And I spend a lot of time talking to the 1021 people, and they're mad as hell and can't take it anymore. I've heard, by the way, that the Peralta branch of 1021 is more militant than some of the others. I've heard that from several places. And it denies education availability for the broader community. And particularly in Oakland, that doesn't mean the white community, So in our contract negotiation at Laney, they just threw us a bone, a tentative money agreement. Not bad, 10% raise, immediate, which these days is not too bad, although it has to be taken into account that that the wages for instructors at Peralta are, I think, 72 out of 73 in the state of California, the lowest. So it's not as good as it sounds. And there are some other little concessions for certain part-timers, counselors, part-time coaches. But the main thing is we do not have a contract. As on the number one issue, the downsizing of Peralta, the administration has made no concessions to the union whatsoever. Okay, so we are still, we have a tentative agreement strictly on money, but on the really important stuff, fighting the downsizing of Peralta, we're still in negotiations. Well, there's also a whole issue about part-timer health care, which I talked about, which I won't get into here. But the main thing is that what's the solution? Well, I should say something about what's going on statewide, because I've been to some of these statewide meetings. And basically, the California Federation of Teachers has put all of its efforts in the last year into pushing for health coverage for part-time instructors, getting that paid for. And they've had some success at that at the state level. Which is great, but it's great having health coverage if you're a part-timer who has a job. But if you're a part-timer who doesn't have a job, then you're still on Obamacare or Covered California. So in a certain sense, they put in all this effort, they spent all this lobbying, and they got a bill passed, and Newsom signed it. Although it still has to be implemented district by district. So if it actually gets implemented, then if you still have a job and if you're teaching at least 2 classes and you're a part-timer, you'll have the same health coverage as the full-timers. So that's great. But that's another bone being thrown to us to distract us from the fact that at the statewide, I go to these meetings and say, let's talk more about the downsizing of Peralta and start thinking about statewide action. And no, all the focus has been on this. So they've had their lobbying success. But, basically, like I said earlier, lobbying and electing another Democrat is not the solution. The solution is The solution is for the unions to get together, all three unions of Peralta, all the unions to get together, organize the students, organize the students' parents, organize the community for strike action for community college education. Same story in the community college sector as in the public health sector that you guys are involved in.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gennaro Baltrip. I'm a rank and file member of Local 10, ILWU. I thank y'all for coming tonight, and I really am pleased that y'all were here to inform us. I wish there were more people here, and that would have been appreciated, but at least the ones that are here, we could take the information and we could go with it. You have to have an action. There's a need for an action, because that's going on. Like you're saying that, I see that on the port with them outsourcing people to fix the crane or something like that, and that's supposed to be longshore work. So eventually that's what's going on there. All this outsourcing and outsourcing and outsourcing till they get you out all the way. And those facilities have been taken over, and now there's no more city workers there. And I understand people have to make a living, and you have to have a livelihood, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and they're not giving you the right benefits. That's just not right. But we need an action. That's education, because that's the unions. I was just in a building, but the CIIS building, and that was a building that used to make swimsuits back in the day. They became union, and I believe when I can't tell you all the history because I was just reading it on the wall. And they became union in 1939. There was a lot of union actions going on in the 30s, and that's when the ILWU became what it is today. And I'm proud of that, because I wouldn't have a decent livelihood. I wouldn't have some medical or something some benefits or anything like that. So I understand the need. I understand the need, and we all need to stand together so that these things could keep going forward. Because if that place wasn't there, if those people have turned that into ecology where people are, well, I'm going there I plan on studying therapy there, therapists. So that's what that place is now. It's a college. But they used to make swimsuits, and they became union. And then they moved to a different space, because when they became union, they expanded in things like that. Union is very important. To have representation is very important, and we need not to lose that. And if sometimes you have to build your own representation in the nonprofit then. Because representation, when I need somebody to come represent me, it's good to have a BA to represent me. It's good to have a business agent to represent me. It's good to have officials that can represent me sometime when I can't stand up for my cost or my issue by myself, you know? Because if there wasn't unions, people would get just took off the job. Like, I had a job at FedEx. They fired me real quick. And I had no union to go to. I had a job at UPS, and when they tried to just get rid of me because they was on strike, I had representation because they have a union. There's a difference. There's the same kind of work environment, but there's a difference in the representation. When you're at FedEx, you know you're easily expendable. When you're at UPS, you got a little bit more ground because you have a union system. When I was studying in school, they were talking about things getting shipped overseas to be produced and stuff like that. That's what it is. It's outsourcing the work. Americans, they say, don't need to do the work. We could send it over here where we don't have to worry about all these union systems that they've built here in America. We could send it to this country, that country, or any other country that's not really the ones that's trying to get into their pockets. And then we could just ship the goods right back to them and sell it to them. It's all the same system as outsourcing. They outsourcing the people. Now they working in division amongst us, making us look like we should be fighting at each other here, because one person, they got to earn a living. They have to work at a nonprofit that maybe not giving them the benefits you need, and then that's taking over somebody else's position that was union that was there before. that is a sign of just, I don't want to say that word. That's not the word I want to say. But at the same time, I respect what we got going on here, and I respect what SLAP stands for. Schools and Labor Against Privatization. And that's what it's really about. It's not just schools and labor alone. There's a lot of things going on in society that we got to look at that's being outsourced and things like that. Our goods are coming from this place or that place. And if it wasn't coming from this place and that place, I probably wouldn't have a job. So I need the ships to keep rolling in. So that's but I don't want to cut nobody off, but I want to let everybody come to like wrap up the evening so that I can clean up this mess and go home
I agree with that.
rest for work tomorrow.
Just one little word. I think there's a good sign on the wall there. It says an injury to one is an injury to all. And that applies internationally as well. I mean, a lot of those workers in another country, they're union too, and they're mad as hell, and we should all work together worldwide.
Right, a worldwide.
Yeah, like there was this German guy who said the working class has no country, Marx, I think his name was, and right, the workers of the world unite, you got nothing to lose except
And there may be,
what we need is social.
there may be a general strike in England. The workers are going on strike there. In France, workers are going on strike. I mean, I think it's time in the United States for workers to stand up and say enough is enough. And we have the power. We have the power because they can have their elections and put whoever they want in, but if working people in this country organize and fight, they have the power to change anything. And next year, the UPS contract is coming up for all the UPS workers. That's 300,000 workers. What should happen
I was
is
working for them when they went on strike in '97. I was working for UPS when they went on strike in '97. And I just graduated high school. They signed me up. They didn't hire me I wanted the airline job, but I didn't get that job. And I worked for UPS, and it was a good job too. I mean, it was real simple, just stack some boxes. And then all of a sudden they come and tell me you're on strike. I didn't really know what it was. Like, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know I was supposed to go to a picket line or anything like that. This is when I was like maybe 19 years old. I didn't know what to do. And then they sent me a little check for like $20. I was like, what is this? I was like, we not working. But the union sent us a check for supplementing our pay because we weren't working and because I wasn't a long-standing union member. I didn't get like the top amount that some of the other people were getting that had put in years at UPS. I had just been there a couple of months. I think I had just probably made my 90 days or whatever. So, I mean, that was horrible. That strike went on for about at least a week or so. Was it a week and a half? Yeah, because I don't think I went back to work because I started college. I didn't get to go back to UPS because I had to go to college down south. So,
I mean, if they want to organize, the UPS workers should organize with the FedEx and the Amazon workers.
Yeah.
And then they should go out together.
Yeah, together.
If the Amazon and the FedEx and the UPS workers go out together next year, that's how to unionize. I mean, for the capitalists, that would be like Armageddon. I mean, everything's shutting down because if UPS, FedEx, and Amazon go out together, this country shuts down.
That's right.
They have to start organizing.
But they have to start organizing now for that. But the point is, if these workers go out together, then all these workers would become union.
What about U.S.
And-
Post Office?
Well, they're already union. But I mean, the point is that if UPS goes out, and it's likely to go out, if they joined with FedEx and Amazon workers, that would be a way to unionize. And that's how it was done in the 1930s. In the 1930s, they all came together, they all went out, and that's how they won. They won because everybody goes out. But I feel that the tide is turning in this country. Because even though there's tremendous pressure on workers, like at UPS and Amazon, or all over, workers are getting angrier and angrier, and they want to fight back. And unions have the power. Unions have the power. The ILWU and unions have the power. They have to use that power. But a lot of these union officials are afraid of using that power. Right. They don't want a general strike. In fact, they don't even want a general strike if there's a coup in this country, if there's a dictatorship.
Just, this will be the last thing I got to say. It's about the jacket I'm wearing. I spent 25 years as a printer at different newspapers, San Francisco Chronicle and others. And in 1994, we had a strike that is a kind of model for the kind of strikes we would. They had, we shut the paper down cold, and what they did is they had this company called the Huffmasters. They were wearing paratrooper uniforms. They were showing up on the picket lines and running over picketers, putting them in the hospital. Well, what happened was at Union City, which is a big press plant, the pressmen and the Teamsters got together and they cleaned their clock. And they shut that place down. The next day, I was on the picket line the next day, and I saw those Huffmaster guards in their paratrooper literally shaking in their boots. That is the power of the working class. They shut that paper physically down at two of the three main plants. The strike went on for 3 weeks. It finally got sold out, which is a long story I don't want to get into. But basically, at the end there were all kinds of different plans to shut down the last plant that was still working at Army Street here in San Francisco. And one of the plans, there's this guy I knew who was kind of an odd duck, but a friend who owned a private plane, and he was going to bomb the place. And there was another guy, plan number 2, there's an electrician who thought he was God's own service to electricity. So he thought that since he knew everything about electricity, he could cut the line reading into the plant, and that the plant would be shut down that way. Well, he was wrong. He got electrocuted, he died, and there is a union scholarship program in his memory. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that people need to get down to serious business, and we need to. If the union bureaucrats stop preventing the workers from mobilizing their strength and just telling them, well, just vote for some Democrat or other and everything will be fine, then there's every possibility to change America completely. And that's the kind of stuff we need to all work together, whether working in a nonprofit, whether working for a city college, working in a community college. You need to all get together and stand up and fight for the rights of the working people. Black and white, Latino, and workers of the world. Asian, and gays, and women, and everybody, and people in all countries. That's what we need.
Question is how to.
And we need to fight for socialism.
Go ahead.
A lot of people don't know that.
Excuse us.
A lot of people don't know that during COVID, a lot of people were fired who were city employees because whatever, for health reasons or whatever, they couldn't get the vaccine. Those people are still fired.
Yeah.
So, any pressure, anybody could call City Hall and say, those people need their jobs back.
Actually, the New York City workers who did not want to get vaccinated for whatever reason were fired, and a court just ruled that they had to get their jobs back. But management used the COVID to get rid of workers, including elected representatives to the bargaining committee in San Francisco. Ken Cox was gotten rid of. And they said, look, you can't be in the bargaining committee, even though the bargaining committee was by Zoom. So why can't you be in the bargaining committee if it's by Zoom? It's a way of getting rid of activists and strong union people, and they use that. And so it's a very dangerous thing, and I think that this coming year, 750,000 workers' contracts come up, not just UPS. 750,000 workers. Wow. And it's like in the newspaper right now, the Chronicle, they're still negotiating for the contract. But the problem is, all these things are isolated.
Yes.
All these unions are isolated, and unfortunately at the Labor Council, they don't want the ILWU there.
Aye.
They don't want the ILWU, and they're not even having meetings now.
Wow.
They're boycotting the bureaucrats, the building trades are boycotting the Labor Council, so they don't even have meetings. Can you imagine that? Because they can't control the delegates, so let's not have meetings.
Wow.
I mean, they're afraid of all the workers coming together and working together and organizing together. I mean, if San Francisco workers knew that the city workers weren't being paid and they were actually dying because they couldn't get health care, you should have a general strike over that. I mean, how far down do you have to go to take action? It's the same with public education. I mean, defending working class public education is a basic human right. All working people should have public education. But they're closing schools in Oakland when they have so much money.
Not only that, I'm very happy to hear all this that we're talking about. But I be very honest with you. The unions need to organize themselves, because what you guys been talking about, the fact that the workers, we cannot mobilize the workers because the union leadership is not allowing for that to happen. Something, we had to develop an alternative or something in order to get this going. Because, I believe profoundly that we're moving towards a fascist state. That fascism is here and it's dangerous. We don't see it, and we start doing all this theoretical stuff, but in reality, what's going on is very serious. The fact that in this country you spend, I don't know how many millions every half an hour on war, while we have thousands of people on the street homeless, while we cannot pay our rent, where all these things are happening, it really concerns me. People are being said, I'm going to sacrifice, for the war because we got to save the world, but we cannot save the people right here. Something is wrong here. So I think that this is I've never been in this meeting before. We went to Momias and all the stuff, right? But we haven't been in this meeting. But I want to say this. We have something in common right now, and that is the struggle that you are having at your place, the struggle that we are having at our place. And I think that we can begin by trying to unite whatever amount of people we can get together and begin to denounce this. That's a step forward where we, the workers, begin to talk about what's happening to us and how they're trying to screw us up and how this nonprofit is. And I want to say it very clearly, and I know people are going to get like, oh, no. But nonprofits were created in order to have the people believe that the system works. And that all we needed was charity. That's a fact. And we need to tell that to people because of what you guys were talking just a few minutes ago. This needs to be public work. It needs to be paid regularly. It needs to be paid, or it needs to be a struggle of working class and not separating it there so that they can give us that. So I'd like to see how we can have an action out of this meeting in which we can call maybe for a press conference and we denounce the situation and demand. Though I'm 100%, and I'm sure that the mothers on the march will be 100% on agreeing on saying that we want to have public workers. We want our people to become public workers. That we want to stop all this nonsense of, I give you 20,000 this year, I give you $500,000 this year, and the following years I give you nothing. We want to stop that. So I like to end it up in that, say that tonight we can maybe try to organize for something like that, and begin from that to try to get the unions to understand that we demand them to do the job that they were elected to do. I hope. That's how I came with all my heart, looking for finding people that we can unite with and we can work with. And that's why we're here, okay? Thank you.
I'm talking about, it's like a bottom-up system. It always be somebody in the real bottom, lower level that noticing everything that's wrong. And then when you go and tell your partner over here, and then they start seeing through your vision how things are, and everybody starts seeing the vision, then everyone gets together and you could stand up and say, hey, this isn't right. The employer, something's not right. It's either the employer or it's the officials or it's us. And somebody got to give. And we're not giving. We're going to stand up and unite and have solidarity. And that's what needs to come and take place. It's already seeming like there needs to be some kind of connection with you guys because you guys are in the same struggle. And we all in the same struggle because like right now we're going through contracts right now and I can't tell you nothing particular about the contract because I'm not in negotiations. But as a person that's a part of this union, I respect what I'm a part of and the history of what I'm a part of. And I hope that we build more moments in history that we can still keep going forward. But tonight, I know everything's not going to be hashed out all in one evening. Like you say, it take time, it take planning, and it takes strategy. This is like a seed that's being dropped in everybody's head right now. And when you got the seed, you got to nurture it.